with the poetry duel, and to keep down physical harm to our presenters, so they don't restrained from punching each other. We have Joyce Nelson as a moderator. After this duel, I'll read a short story, which is something about an utter disaster. And then we'll have Carol Lynch Williams read something out of her novel, primarily out of A Mother to Embarrass Me. And then last, but certainly not least, Peter Sorensen will make fun of everything we hold sacred.
It is with amazement that I welcome so many of you here for an hour of inept and dreadful verse, and what might well be a milepost in the history of bad poetry. We wish to acknowledge the presence of our department chair, who is sitting over at the side and will shortly cover his head with a paper bag to hide his upcoming embarrassment. The families of the participants have asked to remain unacknowledged. However, they will be the ones cowering under the seats at the conclusion of this event. I have been asked to add dignity to an occasion that cannot be dignified, and elegance to an experience that cannot be elevated. We are dispensing with introductions in the interest of time. However, both contestants have substantial chapters in my soon-to-be-published scholarly work entitled Testosterone, Its Uses and Abuses, Men I Have Known. Not wishing to slight Dr. Cutchins, I might add that Dr. Crowe has the longest chapter in this long-awaited and peer-reviewed study. There are some ground rules that we want to give the audience. First, although a hardship to Mormon audiences, we ask that you remain in your seats for the entire performance. To prevent a mass exit with the possibility of trampling each other in your frenzied rush to leave, we have bolted the doors from both the inside and the outside. 2, any attempt to form a human pyramid to escape through the ventilator shafts in the evening will be thwarted by the release of an alloy-based substance, a slippery substance making escape impossible. 3, do not turn off your cell phones. Answer any call you receive and speak as loudly as you wish. Since your pitiful and unimportant little lives will be superior to the performance we are about to give. 4, audience approval, more likely disapproval, is encouraged. However, do not throw anything except money, which several of you have in abundance since you were given large bribes to be here. 5, in public occasions, frightened speakers are encouraged to view their audiences naked. In this case, we encourage a frightened audience to view the contestants as chest-thumping, spear-rattling, macho primitives dressed in animal skin loincloths. 6, at the conclusion of the performance, we will award prizes in what we hope will only be a bad poet society. Please refrain from turning this event into a dead poet society, no matter how much you may wish to participate in a public stoning. And now, our most distinguished guest.
Let me begin with a short introduction, which is very short, in fact. Marshall McLuhan taught us 35 years ago that the medium is the message, and with that in mind, I'm turning away from the old medium of poetry towards what I feel is going to be the new medium of poetry. So, with that much said, we will now hear my first poem entitled Power. Power. Point. A poem. By Dennis Cutchins. Oh, PowerPoint, a Oh, power, point. How lovely are thy graphics? Oh, PowerPoint, oh, PowerPoint, how lovely are thy clip arts? Thy backgrounds are so lovely. The graphs and sounds sound so good to me. Oh, PowerPoint. Oh, PowerPoint. How wonderful are thy flow trees.
Sorry for Cutchins, you have to rely on compressive technology.
And if you understood the true nature of bad poetry, he would have said that McLuhan's message was the minimum is the message in bad poetry, not the medium. But it's cool, man. It's cool. You BYU cats are too young to know and too square to know the proper etiquette at a reading of this nature. So to help you be prepared to respond to the kind of literary scene you're going to get laid on here in a second, let me explain one thing. Clapping is crap. Snapping is cool. So when the maestro reads, there is silence. When the maestro's poem is finished, there is enthusiastic snapping. Let's try it. Snap. There we go. Very good. Cutchins is dead already. Ode a la mode. Praise be to the chilled, creamy stuff that dreams and hips are made of. If I could compose a poem, I would dedicate it to the Shakespeares of cool confections. Baskin Robbins, Ben, Jerry, Hagen, Daz, Dryers, Briars, Blue Bunny, Brahms, and Dairy Queen, Keen and King. Oh, would that I could score a song singing the superiority of frozen flavored cream. If I had but words enough and time, I would pen a purple prose parfait praising the cone, the cup, the bowl, the split, or straight from the carton. Or were I thespianatic, or dramatic, or playwriterly, I would draft a delicious drama starring a chunky chocolate chip character. Or maybe I would mime a malnourished man meandering in the Klondike in search of a fat boy, or even an Eskimo pie. Or perhaps I might create a comedy of flavors that could convert a cold crowd to good humor. Or an opulent opera, a lovely, lively, luscious libretto, justifying joy and jubilation over gelati. But even I know my writing limits, the constraints of talent, budget, diet, and lactose intolerance, and so my ode to a la mode is over before the fat lady sings. Alas, my muse has melted. Leaving my freezer bare, my carton empty, my bowl hollow, and my cone dry. I'm fresh out of flavors, brand names, parlors, and words. So farewell, Fudgesicle. Parting is such sweet sorrow, popsicle. I'll see you in my dreams, dreamsicle. My odd ode to you has reached its fondisicle.
Swoosh. Bang. This joint is a rocket. Screech. Click. Crash. And I ain't just a talk. Tap. Zing. Zoom. But soon I'll be a walking. Clickety. Cha-ching. Ring-a-ding. Right out that back door.
No, the Cutchins doesn't get the snapping. You guys got to know the cool poet gets the snapping. Cutchins gets the crass clap, okay? This is, I'm showing my range here by using German in this poem. Über love. A cloud. A wasp. A day. A radio cacophonies, news, rock, and commercials in a cornucopia of sound, engulfing me in a really big tidal wave of language. And I feel bound to the earth like Prometheus, while your words clog my liver. And I wonder, do you always eat like this? The current, the torrent, drowns me like a river. My swollen heart bursts like overcooked bratwurst. Our true love, once tender, now bitter and brittle, crumbles like cheap concrete under your steel-toed boot.
Dr. Crowe has given me a hard time, but I just want to show that I can dominate in any form. This is just to say that the game you watched last night, ere the score was 2-18 to a baker's dozen, was already lost, like a dish of plums through a murky sky.
I'm now moving into a postmodern poem that shows some of the binaries of human emotion as expressed in poetry. Life's parking lot at night. No one knows my pain. Deep, shallow, gut-wrenching loss so great it drives me insane. Dark light. The agony flashes across the vacant corridor of my mind. Empty, full. The hollowness is as great as a flood in a canyon, making me blind. Alone. 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 Alone, so late at night, black, white, no one knows the sorrow and pain of my forlornity. Like an empty grocery bag, my life blows away into the awful depths of eternity.
Little monkey at the zoo. Don't fling that at me. Don't fling that at me. I would not fling it at you. The tigers love me, and the kangaroos, the polar bears, and the elephants too. There was the unfortunate event with my mother-in-law and the hippopotamus. But we have forgiven each other, and now our friendship is unspotted. The lion loved me, though he is dead now. I mourn him. One day, little monkey, you will die too. And who will mourn you? Yes, who will mourn you? No one will mourn you, little monkey, if you don't stop flinging poo. No one will mourn you on your long, slow drive to Coo, please. But if you love me, little monkey, but if you love me, little monkey,
We have a gun for people who laugh at their own bad poems.
I will love you. And when you die, little monkey, I will mourn for you.
What Dennis doesn't understand about bad poetry, it doesn't have to be crappy to be bad. My finale is a good example of bad poetry because a bad poem cannot be what it says it is. A limmer 6 for Dennis, aspiring poet taster. Once there was a young professor named Cutchins, Dennis, and he very vainly sought to unseat me as a poetic menace. So sorry, little prof. But everyone here verily does scoff at your abysmal attempts at awkward poetic tennis. Your loser reward? A one-way bus ticket to Texas, Ennis. That's the end of the show.
We do have some awards that we are giving to settle this, whatever it was. I am the sole judge of the applause, but we would like you to, by applause, tell us who you think should have the first prize certificate for purely putrid poetry. May we hear your applause now for either Dennis Cutchins or Chris Crowe. Well, you don't even have to have better hearing than I do. Poetry Award for purely putrid poetry, Dennis Cutchins. Our second prize, paltry poetic performance, obviously is given to
I've been robbed.
Second place wins in the bad poetry contest.
severe delusions of adequacy. It is becoming a common practice to award public participants with designer bags of products. We think we have most appropriate gifts for these two would-be poets. Elizabeth Taylor said, "Success is a great deodorant. It takes away all your past smells." Since success did not occur for these two today, these lovely bags are filled with designer samples of a deodorant, fragrant room spray, and expensive potpourri. When this event is finished, we do ask you to leave as quickly as you can. We have hired a Delta sanitation and fumigation team to prepare the room for a more distinguished event to follow this.
Top that. How can you wonder that?
Thank you. This is from a young adult novel, and my working title that I just made up just a few minutes ago is Love in a Dairy. Chapter 1, Kissing Lessons. In my dream, dairy cows danced the foxtrot, their forelegs flung across each other's shoulders, their udders swinging low. From between their swaying bodies, Maddie waved for me to cross the floor and dance with her, but I was too bashful to stand from my chair. Her father, Harold, crooned into the microphone, "I'm misty and so much in love." The cows held each other close, moving their haunches in awkward steps. Slow, slow, quick, quick. Maddie cupped her hands around her mouth and called to me, but I couldn't understand her over the thundering of hooves. Finally, the song finished, and the cows dropped to all fours, chatting and chewing their cuds. Maddie's voice rang clear. "Daddy says if you're late one more time, you'll muck out the corral with a teaspoon." Fear clutched at me, and I fought my way out of the dream, like swimming up from under deep water. I opened my eyes to darkness and grabbed my watch. 5 o'clock. He's late for work, and I'm going to skip over some of this. He imagined that this day is going to be the day that he finally is able to tell Maddie that without her love, his life has no meaning. He imagined the scene 100 times. She would look up at him from swabbing off a cow's udder so they could kiss in next to the milking stanchion, the suck-suck of the milk pump, like a rhythm of a song. So he takes a little while to get there. They play jazz in this dairy, which has been proved to be more conducive to the cows letting down their milk than any other kind of music. So, dumped my bike and pushed the door open, slipping inside the room with the tank. With the tank, milk tank is on the right side, and the room with the cows lined up in it is on the left side. And so he slips into the room. "Heaven, I'm in heaven," sang Ella Fitzgerald on a CD, and my heart beat so that I could hardly speak. The air was full of the rich odor of milk and, of course, cow manure. But like my mother says, you take the good with the bad in this life. The room thrummed with the sound of suction and of the paddle turning the surface of the milk, sweeping the cream into a smaller tank. I pushed the swinging door and walked into the parlor, which is a silly name for the room where cows are milked. The cows, 4 on a side, stood in their stanchions and munched their grain. The milking machines hooked to their udders. The vacuum pump sucked and sucked the milk. Maddie turned, one hand on her hip, and I felt suddenly like I was back in my dream, too shy to speak. I felt silly because we'd been friends most of our lives, but recently something not easy to describe had changed for me. Even in her Billcat t-shirt and manure-caked boots, she seemed as beautiful as a night vision. "Yo, Maddie," I said, "you're looking good." "Hey, Moroni," said Shell, her younger sister, 2 years younger than us, shorter, dark-haired version of Maddie, except that she's smarter than both of us put together. Maddie said nothing. She just frowned. The muscles behind her eyebrows bunched up. "Moroni," she shouted over the music, "you've got to stop sleeping in." "When we're out together, dancing cheek to cheek," I heard over the music. I took Maddie's hands and tried to waltz her across the aisle between the two rows of cows. At first she smiled and then pushed my hands down. Moroni stopped clowning around. The door opened, and Harold walked in. He's a big man, with huge shoulders and a pot belly. Looming over me, he looked like an over-the-hill pro wrestler. Moroni, he said, "You're late." "I slept through my alarm, sir," I said. I'd never seen him so worked up, and I tried not to move a muscle. I didn't know whether he'd punch me, which worried me because his fist could dent a 50-gallon barrel. "Your watch alarm," he frowned. "That wouldn't wake a pissant." I tried not to smile. "No, sir, you're right. I'm sure it wouldn't wake a pissant." "Don't be sarcastic, Moroni," said Harold. "Get yourself an alarm clock." He turned to leave. "If you're late again, I'll fire your butt out of here." I knew he was serious as sin, but still had this strong urge to ask him if the rest of me could still come to work if only my butt was fired. "Thank you, Harold," I said. He glared over his shoulder at me as Sarah Vaughan sang, "Raindrops on roses and whiskers on chittens, bright copper kettles and warm woolen mittens." "Maddie's long hair when she lets it fall down," I whispered. "What?" said Harold. "I can't hear you when you mumble." "Nothing, sir," I said. "I was just singing along. These are a few of my favorite things." "Well, put a sock in it and get to work. I don't pay you to sing." He shut the swinging door and left the parlor. "Wild geese that fly with the moon on their wings." Maddie's mouth was turned down in a frown the same shape as her father's. She finished washing her cow and plugged the long milking tubes into each teat. The vacuum pump sucked the milk through clear plastic hoses which pumped the milk to the tank ready for hauling to pasture-fresh dairy in Salt Lake City. She moved on to the next cow. "So stop standing there like a lawn ornament," she said. "Get your butt in gear and give us some help." "Sure, Mad," I said. "And please don't call me Mad." Shell grinned, wiping down the udder on her side of the aisle. "Dang it all," I whispered. I didn't care much what Harold thought of me, so long as he didn't fire me or my butt. But Maddie was a different matter. She has long, strawberry blonde hair that school swings down below her hip pockets. I would have worked for free, if only every morning I could watch her lift her hat at the end of milking and let her long hair tumble out. I walked over to where she stood. She scrubbed Felicity's udder with a soapy rag and then examined each peaked teat for wire cuts or mastitis. On the farm we call them tits, but someone told me it was improper to use that word, so I'm using the word teat. Maddie's fingers were long and sure, the fingers of a pianist or a veterinarian. I wish that she was touching my hands instead of fondling a cow's faucets. "I can't work with you angry with me," I said. She glared at me and then her face softened. "You're the sweetest boy I know," she said, "and you're my friend forever, no matter what you do. But you've got to wake up on time. Daddy won't stand for it anymore." She laid her hand on my arm. Now get started." She handed me her rag and the bucket and walked out toward the milk tank where I saw her take out the equipment to measure the percentage of milk fat. "Summer has cut herself on some barbed wire," Shell said. "I thought we had it all cleaned up." My soul sang because Maddie had called me a sweet boy. I knew that sweet was a universe away from hot, but it was a beginning. I bellowed along with the radio. Girls in white dresses with blue satin sashes. Shell marched out into the tank room to get the bag balm. I could see the two sisters shoulder to shoulder as Maddie lifted the test tube and peered up at it. I looked at Felicity's udder, her teats as pink as human lips. Maddie had gently washed them, her fingers caressing each one. "Kissing sweet girls with soft pinkish lips," I sang. "These are a few of my favorite things." I'd wondered again and again how my lips would tingle when I finally pressed them against her lips. But this morning, kissing was a distant and fading hope. Something warm and desperate seeped into my heart. Was it love or a kind of insanity? I'd never kissed any girl, certainly not Maddie, and I wanted to know what it felt like. Her fingers had caressed these teats, which were soft and pink as lips. I checked to see that nobody was watching. I turned my head sideways and ducked low, pressing my mouth against one of Felicity's dugs. I'd heard that kisses were warm and moist, but this was a little clammy. "Moroni," said Shell right behind me. I jerked, bumping my head up against Felicity's flank. She lifted her hoof and threatened to kick. I pulled my head out and turned to face Shell. I felt a flush of red creep across my face. Shell said, "What on God's sweet earth do you think you're doing?" I didn't know what to say. I was checking her out. I thought she would have a wire cut. Rochelle grinned. You were freaking kissing her udder. I opened my mouth and shut it again. A woman with a deep and powerful voice sang, "Willow, weep for me." "You look like a fish," Shell said. I didn't know you were such a pervert." She swiped off another cow's udder and attached the 4 tubes. She walked to the next cow who had just pressed her nose against the panel that let a small shower of grain fall down. "Have you ever kissed a girl?" "Why are you talking about kissing Moroni?" said Madeline, coming back into the milk parlor. "Bend your branches down along this stream that runs to the sea," the loudspeaker said. Shell's face turned red. We probably looked like twins. "You should have seen what he was doing while you were gone. I don't want to know." But she stepped toward Shell, grinning. "He was kissing Felicity's boobs." "He was what?" "Cows don't have boobs," I said. Shell snorted and then walked across, pointing. "Right there." He looked like he was a calf trying to suck. The 2 sisters bent over laughing, holding their shoulders and leaning against each other. I watched Maddie's face with her eyes all scrunched up, laughing at me. I wanted to melt through the floor, or walk out and tell Harold that he could take his job and shove it. "I think he's never kissed a girl before," said Shell. Maddie walked toward me. "Is that true?" "The Bible says that we should mortify the flesh, but I'd never before understood what it meant. Even my muscles felt heavy with humiliation. No, I lied. I've kissed lots of girls. Gone, my lover's dream, lovely summer dream." "Oh," said Maddie, "I was going to give you a lesson." She smiled at you. "Your first lesson." She turned away. "But if you already know how." "Yes," I said. I know. I confess, I have virgin lips. I've never kissed anyone but my mom and my grandma." "He wants lessons from you, Maddie," said Shell. "Well," said Maddie, "there are 3 principles of good kissing." She took another step toward me, holding up 3 fingers. I wanted to run away, hide my embarrassment, but at the same time, I remembered that today was my day of destiny. Watching her clear, beautiful face, the shame melted away, and I nearly swooned from the rush of pleasure. "Pressure," she said, making her lips pooch out with the popping sound of the P. "Motion." She pressed her lips together in a long and suction. "Suction," I croaked. My mouth was dry as straw. She closed her eyes and leaned forward. I looked at her pink lips, which were about half a foot from mine. She licked them once, and they glistened in the fluorescent light. It seemed like all sound stopped, except for the rhythmic sucking of the milking tubes. I closed my eyes, too, and leaned forward, parting my lips slightly as I'd seen actors do in the movies. The next thing I knew, my lips were nearly ripped off my face. The milking tube pulled my tongue. I jerked it off and glared at Maddie, who leaned against the stanchion, laughing. My lips and tongue burned, but worse than that was the pain in my chest. I wanted to drown myself in the milk tank. When they found me floating there one morning, they'd be sorry. "That was mean," said Shell. "He can take it," said Maddie. "And anyway, he deserved it. There's nobody who's 16 who hasn't been kissed. So none will find me sighing and crying all the time. Oh, Willow, weep for me. Weep in sympathy." I jerked the rag out of the soapy water and swiped it across Hope's udder. She lifted her foot and stomped, showing that she wouldn't put up with that kind of mistreatment. "He's pissed," said Shell. "Sorry, Moroni," said Maddie. She laid her arm across my shoulders. "It's just too much fun to tease you." "A friend wouldn't have done that," I said. My speech slurred because my tongue and lips tingled. She laid her palm against my cheek and turned my face toward her. "A friend wouldn't lie to a friend," she said. Right then I didn't want to love her, didn't want to be thrilled by her hand on my face. I pulled myself free. "It's true," I said. "I've never been kissed." "At least until today," said Maddie. "That doesn't count," said Shell. "A machine doesn't count. He still has virgin lips." "He does not," said Maddie. And I don't know why she didn't just let it go. I wanted to grab her shoulders and shake her. "The burden of proof is on you, Madeline," said Shell. "You're the one who's accused him of lying." "Okay," said Maddie. "You figure a way to prove it to me and I'll eat my words." "Eat your words," I said. "That's not good enough." "I know," said Shell. "You take a week, Maddie, and find someone in school who admits to kissing him." Maddie frowned, and I did too. "You could bribe somebody into saying anything," I said. "I wouldn't bribe someone over a silly bet," said Maddie. "And if you can't find someone," I said. "She'll crawl on her knees from the computer lab up to the principal's office," said Shell. Maddie opened her mouth and shut it again. "Barking like a dog," said Shell. I watched Maddie's mouth flatten into a hard, stubborn line. I knew we had her. "Deal," I said. Maddie looked at me and then her little sister, Dill, she said, "Now let's get back to work." Thank you.
I have to say I was really embarrassed when I came in and saw Chris Crowe in the sunglasses. I was like horrified. I almost left. But I do want to say that to start out by saying I have a really bad poem. It's actually been published. Anyway, I will read it to you. Missing, kissing, oh George, I am missing your kissing, kissing, missing. So, I want to read to you from A Mother to Embarrass Me. This is a story of a little girl whose name is Laura, and she is getting ready to find out some horrible news. She's an only child. She lives with her mother and her father in Mapleton, Utah. And she's at dinner at Mi Ranchito in Orem. And you guys who want to be writers, you know you can always use your friends in books and restaurants and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, and this is kind of a little bit of what's going on in her life. She's with her best friend, Mary, her mom, and her dad, whose name is Danny. Dad, Mary, and I all looked at Mom. I was angry. "I've got wonderful news," Mom said. "Wonderful for all of us." "Danny, Laura." Mom grinned like she did on those old magazine covers. "Mary, even you should be happy about this." Mom clasped her hands in front of her, still holding the knife. Lucky for her, she didn't put out an eye. "I just want you to know," Mom paused like she expected a drum roll, "that I am 6 months pregnant. We're going to have a baby." I had thought nothing could be worse than my mother almost burning down the house. Watching my father try to free himself from the car had been pretty bad too. Seeing them in the restaurant dancing some made-up I don't know what dance while a guitar player sang and grinned, that was awful. But none of those things was the worst. I don't remember what I ate for dinner that evening. Maybe it was beef tacos, maybe it was chicken enchiladas, maybe it was my own plate. I was so horrified by Mom's announcement that all I could do was look at the ground. That was after I shouted, "What? You've been having, but you're so old." I glanced around, looking at the people who were staring at us. "Not so loud, honey," Dad said through a wide, white smile. "I'm not that old," Mom said. "For heaven's sake, Laurie, I'm 38. I leaned across the table, clutching my napkin. Knowing she was pregnant made my face burn. Just last year in Science Health, I had seen the pictures about how a baby gets to be a baby. I knew what they had been doing. All of Mi Ranchito knew. "Mother, do you know how close to 40 you are?" I whispered through clenched teeth. "Oh, Laura," Mary said, "this is great." "Great, not great," I said. I faced my friend. "She's 40. 4T. Dad laughed a little. "Honey, 2 years away, too." He held up 2 fingers. I had no idea what he meant. "You two are too old." I wanted to say too old to be doing the deed, but I was embarrassed. Mom and Dad were probably too old to even know what that meant. Every time I saw my mother's pink face and my father grinning and Mary's smiling, I felt appalled. Didn't my best friend get it? Didn't they? My mother and father, the oldest people in my immediate family, had been doing it. The it that would get my ancient mother pregnant. I thought they were too old for, I couldn't even bring myself to say the word. I could barely think the first letter. S. I thought people stopped having you-know-what when they were about 29. Mary leaned toward me. "Now you know," she whispered when Dad and Mom were toasting each other with caffeine-free Coca-Colas. "I know what. You know why your mom nearly burned down the house?" "No, I don't." I glared at Mary, my eyebrows pushed together. "Sure you do. She's pregnant." Mary lifted her hands at me like I might find an answer for my parents' craziness hidden between her fingers. "Ha!" I said. The only thing I knew now was why my mother was getting heavier. She should be heavier. I should have noticed Mom was getting heavier, especially in her tummy area. The fact was, though, she wasn't that much bigger. I mean, her face looked a little puffy, but it was hard to notice. Mom didn't look a thing like Mariah Berry when she got pregnant. That girl porked right up, and it was her first baby. I only know that because she came to our house to talk to Mom about exercising, and she said those very words. She said, "I've porked right up." On my way home that night, I tried to ignore my mother and father and best friend as they sang baby songs. Baby songs. I guess there were things to be thankful for. Dad wanted to stop at a music store so he could buy a guitar. I'm sure I could teach myself a song on the way to Mapleton, he said, pulling into Keith Jorgensen's. It can't be that hard. Jimmy, you can drive us home. Okay, Danny, Mom said. The store was closed, and even all of Dad's tapping on the window, the employees counting money at the cash register, wouldn't open up for him. That is the last time I shop here, Dad said as he climbed in the car. They could have let me in, and they didn't. The good thing was that the window I sat behind in the car was tinted. I was pretty sure no one could see me in the store. In my room that night, after we dropped Mary off at home, I had a good long chance to think. I guess I wasn't expecting Mom to get pregnant, I said to no one when I went out into the balcony. It was a clear night, and the sky glittered with stars. The moon had yet to peek over the mountains, so it was pretty dark out. Only a hint of smoke smell remained in my room. I said, she's miscarried all those other babies she's tried to have. I had lost count, but I knew that there had been at least 5 miscarriages after I was born. Those Mom had spoken to me about. I remembered her talking to me a year or two before when we still saw things the same way. She'd been so sad. Laurie, she had said, I really wanted a big family. We were in her studio where she fashioned a little girl with fat cheeks wearing only a diaper from clay to be bronzed. Eventually this too would be added to her collection. I'm sorry, Mom. I breathed deep the smells of the orange clay and watched Mom's slender hands smooth the child's skin. I felt sorry for my mother. A baby would have been a nice thing to have around the house. But I felt a little guilty too. I kind of liked being an only child. I had all of Mom's attention. I worked clay with her. She taught me to draw. We went places together, did stuff. It was a nice life. For sure, a baby would change all that. I thought as I sat on my little balcony how lonely Mom must have been for another child. I mean, to try so many times. And now at such an old age. Good grief. I was nearly 40. If you ask me, the S word should be saved for the young. Not my age, but definitely not my mother's either, for people on television. I watched the moon rise and in the darkness of the evening tried to follow the bats flying after mosquitoes. I thought of Mom and Dad down the hall doing it. I thought of the baby Mom carried. I thought of her almost burning down her house. Yes, I liked being the only child in the Stephen home, but I was tired of carrying this burden alone. If Mom and Dad had succeeded having other babies, I would have been sharing this awful moment with a sibling. One that I am sure would have loved me and would pretty much have done everything I wanted him to do, including the hating thought, like I did, of my mother, being pregnant at the very old age of 38. I pulled out my list. Things to change about my mother. Number 11. She's been doing it, very possibly here in the house. Do I have enough time to read one more? A few days later, Mom made an announcement at the table. Maggie Lauritsen was over for the night, and so was Mary. The 3 of us had planned an evening of watching old movies down in the basement theater, staying up all night talking and eating junk food. We had come to the dinner table dressed in pajamas. The sun still sat high in the sky. Dad had brought home Thai food for dinner. The house was cool and smelled like roses. Mom looked at everyone after we had said the blessing. I have an announcement. I was glad she didn't tap her water glass like she had in the Mexican restaurant. Something's happened to me today. What now? I asked. Twins? Laura, Mary said. She slapped on my hand already. She smiled at my mother. No, Laurie, Mom said, you were so funny. Something happened today. It was a good thing. We all looked at her. I prayed that this had nothing to do with disco dancing or whatever that was that had frozen my father in the butt-up position. I got a call from the Rocky Mountain Fitness Center in Spanish Fork. The manager noticed when I was working out, Mom lifted both hands high into the air like maybe she hefted weights herself, even though she really just held a bottle of soy sauce, that I am going to have a baby, and guess what? You noticed you're pregnant. I said, that's a surprise. Mom pretended not to hear me. Instead, she talked to my friends and my father, who all leaned toward her. Maggie's short brown hair hung over her peanut butter curry. Mary looked from Mom to me, then back to Mom again. Now she grinned. What, Jimmy? Dad said. What happened? Ignore the oldest child. They asked me to be in a television commercial for their fitness center, to be aired everywhere in the West where they have a gym. Mom pursed her lips like she does when she's trying to hide a surprise from me. What? I said, only it really wasn't a what that came out. It was more of a grok. The Rocky Mountain Fitness Center, Mom said. Can you believe it? You took a modeling job, Dad asked. Yes, Mom said. You're kidding, Mary said, and she swung her head in my direction and grinned even bigger. Cool, Mrs. Stephen, the Rocky Mountain Fitness Center. Yes, said Maggie, that really is neat. My brother works out there. The Rocky Mountain Fitness Center. But you're showing, I said. I gestured with my eyebrows at Mom's belly, which was hidden beneath the table. What? Mom asked. I said, you're showing. It is noticeable that you are pregnant. A bit of sticky rice seemed to have gotten stuck right in the middle of my throat. I swallowed to make it go down, but it wouldn't budge. In fact, it felt like it was expanding. I don't think you want people to notice that you're, Mom picked up a spring roll. She held on to it like it was a delicate cup filled with tea. That's the exciting part of the commercial. It's for pregnant people. From outside, I heard our neighbor's dog start barking. Was he excited too? Tell us all about it, Dad said. He put his elbows on the table and rested his chin on his hands. He looked at Mom with dreamy eyes. She looked back at him with dreamy eyes. Maybe it was the dreamy eyes that had begun this whole pregnant incident. I felt they should stop it right this second. Stop it, I said, right this second. Now both my parents ignored me. Cool, said Maggie. She looked around the table like she knew something no one else did. I know a TV star. A pregnant TV star, I said. The Thai food was starting to smell kind of greasy. Your belly will show, I said to Mom. I know! Mom smiled, then broke out into a huge grin. Her white teeth seemed to sparkle, like maybe we were making a commercial at our dinner table. The beautiful, hugely pregnant woman with her husband, also happy, and 3 children, young adults, I mean, all beaming, sort of. It was me. My mouth tried to beam, tried to look happy, but I knew I was failing. My lips had the sneer feel to them. I pointed my fork at her. What? Mom asked. My... Mom's voice was a prompt. Her hands helped, waving at me. Your bosoms. Mom's head tilted a little to the left and then to the right. I felt my face turn pink. Mary gave a sniff that I knew meant I had embarrassed her. Maggie looked down at her plate. They are huge. I finished my sentence and gave a cough. Sticky rice flew out of my mouth and landed on the table near a vase of water that held 3 pink and yellow roses. Mom bit her bottom lip like she was giving the word bosoms deep consideration. I do have 2 of them, she said. Dad let out a bark of a laugh. I have heard of people with extra nipples, though, Mom said. Stop right there, I said. Don't embarrass me any further, or my friends. For sure, both Mary and Maggie looked embarrassed. The N-word had definitely gotten to them. Your breasts, I said, emphasizing the word even though it caused Maggie to giggle, will show. So will your belly. Bosoms and bellies, Dad said. It sounds like a jelly or something. Mom, stop, Dad. He's grossing us all out. Are you too grossed out? I looked at Mary and Maggie, but they both shook their heads. Yes, you are, I said. I know you are. Finally, Mom said, Laurie, I promise to wear a bra. Or 2, I said.
I've got 2 minutes. I don't know what I can say in 2 minutes. But I'll try something. Oh, that's too bad. We've done an Elton John number. Well, that's all right. Here we go. I don't like that one. Yes. Well, if you'll go and take my 251 class, down there in 1101, they'll be bemused. They're probably all here, to be honest. I've got what I need. Okay. I don't think I do. Let's see. I don't even have what I need. All right. We're just going to cut right to the chase here. Many of you have wanted to meet a great religious leader. I know no literary giants, but I do know 1 or 2 religious leaders. President Hinckley has asked me to conduct this session of the Humorous readings at the 138,000th General Conference. I've been concerned lately that we have so many general authorities and so few specific authorities. I mentioned this in a meeting with the brethren where they were decrying the skyscrapers in Salt Lake City, blotting out our view
of that glorious edifice. I said, I love a skyscraper. I learned a little poem in my Sunday school. I'd like to share it with you now. May I? I love a skyscraper, so tall and true, reaching into a sky of blue. I love a skyscraper, and hope that I may be tall and true, like one of those, to come and dwell with thee. I remember when I was a young lad in my Sunday school class, our teacher opened our eyes and ears to the glory of the gospel. She said, how much money do we have in our class party fund? The depression cry went up, $2.47. Let's take that money over to Bobby's house. The depression has hit hard. Bobby's father is out of work. Times have been rough. Needless to say, brothers and sisters, that we took that money and put it in the careworn hands of that little boy's father. And may I say that we fairly skipped home, knowing that we had done our good deed. When I was a young bishop, we had the task of visiting widows. At the time, I was only 22 years old, the youngest bishop in church history. I was full of energy, zeal, vim, and vigor. However, my counselors were in their 50s, and I committed them to visit every widow every day. We had 80 widows in our immediate block. And unfortunately, ward boundaries were much bigger back then. And so we took to our automobiles and made mad dashes around town, visiting 800 widows. My counselors were wonderful people. I spoke at their funeral a couple of weeks later, and I remarked how faithful they had been, and what a good feeling we all had for a while. Tell them I'm going to be there. I don't want them sneaking out. Yeah. I don't know how I got all the wrong junk here. Oh, well. Brothers and sisters, I would like to speak today in simple terms, in a kind of language that even the smallest child can understand. As we adumbrate the flectennials of present Protestant, we must realize to be merely perspicacious is not enough. We must be hypercognizant. And while we must calibrate, we should never be revocatory. Our entire salvation depends on the morganatics of the tintinnabulation of these pristine as in plastic unity. This was expressed by the Apostle Peter as he encountered James. James asked, Peter, where are the pickled peppers? Peter said, mayhap they are with Mary. James rejoined, where is Mary? Why, she is selling seashells by the seashore. This has been a wonderful gathering. We're grateful for all who could attend. We wish we could meet you all. We wish we could have more of you attend. When I was a little boy growing up in Salt Lake, things weren't as magnificent as they are now. I look at this pulpit and recall how often I climbed on it. There was so little food back then, so little shelter. If we'd had some ham, we could have had ham and eggs, if there were any eggs. We had no matchsticks. That was all right, since we had no firewood. And then came the Depression.
Thank you for being here. We do have some refreshments in the classroom to the left of Special Collections, and I thank you for being here. Next week's reader is Richard Dutcher.